Hi everyone, I'm Matt Diener, the CEO of Screen Producers Australia, and I'm really delighted to welcome you to our first takeaway for 2025. As you know, this was a series we started here in lockdown, and now we've got them every so often where we get an opportunity to talk to someone who's really driving our industry in different ways. And we're here as part of a team here with Tribal Apes, who we've been partnering with in many ways. They're a great production outfit here, also at Disney Studios. And we're really pleased after these takeaways, which we record and have available to people to see. We usually have a breakfast in person. So if you're ever in Sydney and you get a chance to join us, please do so. We're here also on Gadigal land, and Australia is blessed to have so many fantastic Indigenous storytellers and Indigenous people that drive our industry. And I want to acknowledge their contribution not only to our industry but to our culture and to Australia generally. I am stupidly pleased to welcome Wayne Garvie to join us for a conversation today. Wayne, you've been a big part of at least the industry and my knowledge of person who's been driving our global industry in many ways. So it's a great pleasure to sit down and talk to you finally. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Give me I want to break down a few opportunities, but you're in charge of Sony's international production for its television department. And in that overview, you have many different aspects of your role, but you also get a bit of a eagle, lens over what's going on across the sector. Is it a good time to be doing what we do here?
Well, at the moment, there's a little bit, in the UK in particular, there's a bit of, oh God, we're not making as much as we were a couple of years ago, and people are a bit down, particularly in drama.
Yes.
And as I keep saying to people, if you'd said to a British drama producer 20 years ago, when reality TV, and I was making some of that stuff, was ruling the world. You couldn't move for Simon Cowell projects, and drama, no one was taking drama seriously, and it felt like the end of the world. If you say in 20 years' time, all those free-to-air broadcasters in the UK are still going to be around, they're still going to be commissioning drama, and it's going to be at the heart of what they do, as opposed to reality. And on top of that, you're going to be able to retain the rights largely, and there's going to be these streaming services that are going to take your content, show them to the world, often paying Hollywood movie-style budgets. If you had said, that's what you're going to have, they would have bitten your hand off. Now, the fact is, there ain't as much content being made as there was, say, 3 years ago or whatever. But that's quite right, because as we all know, anecdotally from our own viewing patterns, there's too much content. So I don't think there is a better time. But then I'm a continual optimist, and I believe that change is always good, and the successful producers are always the producers that adapt and change to a changing environment.
Is it as good a time, to your point though, if you are a documentary producer or a reality TV producer, is it really the golden age for scripted that we're still talking about?
Well, I think if you're... It depends what you mean by reality. So if you're doing a dating show on an island, there is no better time to be alive. If you're making studio...
chat show stuff.
Then it's difficult.
Right.
But you see, the thing is...
Why?
Well, because audience tastes have changed.
Right.
Because the audience is changing all the time. You and I mean... You're not as old as me, you're a young man, but we grew up in an age in which there was very limited broadcast platforms, and your choice was very limited, not to mention all the entertainment available on that. And so consequently, one would sit in on a Wednesday evening and watch an hour of a home makeover show. Well, who's going to do that now? Why would you do that now? When you could watch great dramas, great documentaries, great, look at sport now. Sport's become, that's the thing that powers it. So audiences have changed, technology has changed, and as producers, you have to adapt. Otherwise, we'll still be making the kind of shows that our ancestors that were made in the 50s.
So that's a case for probably the high quality big shows that we do. Is there still a role for the smaller, lighter shows that maybe have filled schedules in the past? I
think that's challenged. I think that is challenged, and you see that here in Australia, where the free to air, 7, 9, and 10 are very challenged with the kind of dramas that they can afford or they want to put into. I think that stuff. It's oddly, actually, I'm now going to contradict myself. I think you either go big or you go small or interesting. It's the mid-range stuff that I think is difficult to fund. And also, I have this constant thing, and why do you want to tell that story? I mean, why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, life's too short, isn't it? You've got choices.
Yeah, well, let's get into Australia in a second, but I wanted to, you've made some comments about and I think everyone knows there's a challenge in trying to get pre-sales into the US at the moment. And, you know, what are we in February 2025?
Yep.
Is that a blip in time, not really a problem down the line, or is it something that's structurally changing around how financing is done?
I'm hoping it's a blip. I mean, one of the advantages you have in Australia is that you were never addicted to the crack cocaine of the American pre-sale as the Brits were. Did you? I mean, because they were quite unusual.
Because that sort of shifted, didn't it? Maybe 10, 15 years ago, that became the system of financing.
Yeah. Well, actually, your distribution advance was probably based on American sale as opposed to a pre-sale, because true co-productions are quite difficult to get to for cultural reasons. But what we've seen, certainly in the last year, we at the LA screenings where we show our programs to the world, and we expect people to come in. I think we launched 8 new shows last year. 6 were this is English language content, of which 6 came from my division. One of which was a Curio show, A Narrow Road to the Deep North. And of those 6 shows, I think we've only sold 1 so far in America. And that's unusual. And some of them, there was a couple I didn't expect to sell. But what's happened is that in America, a number of things have happened. One, it's the fallout still from COVID, because there's suddenly a programming glut. Secondly, the strikes happen.
They've got a lot of stuff in stock, so just still to go rolling out. They don't need a lot.
Then I think in the strikes, when they didn't, again, there was another stop-off and they weren't getting the material through. They didn't have the fall in subscriber numbers they thought they were going to do. So people have quite rightly sort of looked at it and gone, we don't need as much inventory as we thought we did. But look, we've got a left bank project in the moment that I'm quite heavily involved in that we've got a couple of American buyers who are interested in. We've just Bad Wolf have just got a on one, but these are things we haven't announced yet, so I might just be making this up. You'll never know. But I'm beginning to see the pre-sale. That's beginning to happen, and it will be interesting over the next 6 months or so to see if they're going to start buying tape again.
You've worked in different roles, with Granada, I think originally, and then All 3 Media, probably BBC, a bit of a plotted histories around that. Is it really struggling? Is it a struggle if you aren't a global business in this environment now?
I think it's really difficult, and I see that. It's quite interesting because we, again, I don't want to talk too much about the British market, but we.
I think it's useful.
Yeah, we're funding quite a lot of BBC shows at the moment. I mean, we happen to be at a moment in time and we're making quite a lot for them. One of which, £10 Bombs, we shoot here in Australia. I've now completely lost my train of thought.
The global business. If you're a producing business, and you would have had a lot of.
It's early. I only flew in yesterday. I mean, give me a break. What was it? Ellen, where are we? Who are you again? What am I doing here? This strange country, these strange people.
Help me! You don't even know where you are. It's actually it goes with the job, right? You're in a plane every second day, and you're doing all of this.
Yeah, but the great thing is that I do get to fly around the world and meet brilliant people. I mean, that's the best thing of my job.
Thank you. You didn't need to say that.
Well, there's some exceptions. But most people we meet are great. What was I talking about? We were talking about the
challenge of producing, if you're part of a global business, is it sets you up in a certain way, but it doesn't give you
I know exactly what
pass.
you're asking. Yes, you were basically saying
about the broader
are
ecology.
You screwed if you're a small producer?
Well, I wouldn't have put it quite like that, but it is one of the questions about the challenges for different people.
I think in drama now, it's who your distribution partner is even more useful than ever. And even the big distributors are finding it difficult, as we talked, to fund some of this drama and some of the. This is a big debate that's happening in the UK at the moment about British drama, how you fund it, etc. I think also you need to be working with partners who have scale. I think it's absolutely true. Even if you've got a documentary, you need to somehow have someone who can help you take and tell that story elsewhere. So I'm afraid it is very, very difficult, and I'm very much aware that I speak from a privileged position. I work for a huge global company that's Japanese owned, American run effectively, with deep pockets, with you know, we can cash flow stuff, etc. So I absolutely get that. But if I was starting out now as a producer with an indie, I think the most important thing would be, who is my distribution partner? Yes. And I probably wouldn't want to play the market. I'd probably want one partner that partners me for a long period of time.
Tell me about the shift that we're seeing. I will narrow this down, but the shift in terms of political, the environment in America. We're an American-run company. It's there's a big shift politically that's happening, or feels like it's happening, in an industry that's very much stands out as different from some of the rest of the United States in terms of its thinking and its ideology. And does it set its teeth apart from the rest of the US at the moment? Is there an edge there that needs to be adjusted or thought about? And what does that mean? Because America is still globally leading many parts of our industry.
Well, I think you will find that. I mean, there's definitely I was in Los Angeles when the election happened, and there was a palpable sense of shock. Yeah, right. It was a shock because people did not expect Trump to win with such a, I mean, it wasn't overwhelming, but it was a clear, he's got a there's no argument about it. The people voted for him. And I think that was shocking. And, I speak as someone whose politics are on the left, and I do find we've reached this interesting moment in time where the very people we think we're trying to help don't really like us very much. And you begin to think, well, what is the story? What is the story we are telling to young people in their 20s in, I don't know, some of the Sydney suburbs or Hartlepool in England or Midwest America? How can we present a story in which we say democracy is something that they should believe in, when at this moment in time we live in an anxious age without much hope? People don't feel that, they genuinely don't. So I think we need to think how we respond to that. But I think you will see, inevitably, a shift towards making programs in America that somehow those making those programming decisions think will absolutely work for people. And you've seen a bit of this already. There's definitely, Sony makes a show called The Night Agent from Netflix, which is very successful. It's a really great show. And 10 years ago, that would have been an American network show. Sean Ryan's a brilliant writer, producer. I mean, it's a really classy bit of television. It's not, it's deliberately not an esoteric piece of, you've got to go away and think about it. It's pleasure. It's absolute pleasure. And that worked really, really well for Netflix. And you've seen since then the development of a commissioner said to me the other day, I've taken what you said to me, that I just want crash bang wallop shows. And there is a sense that you want crash bang wallop. You want, shows that have high adrenaline and are exciting, everything that appeals to a audience who perhaps just wants entertainment. And then on top of that, I'm totally rambling, aren't I? But you see the things like the Kevin Costner Yellowstone and all that. And what I thought was very interesting, where Yellowstone works really well? Yeah, where? Australia. Right. It's very successful in Australia. Yeah. And there is something about it that speaks to something in the heartland of Australia in some way. And
the myth of Australia,
the myth of Australia. Yes, the myth of Australia.
That we are actually a very urbanised, coastal living community, but imagine ourselves sometimes as well as the world.
So if I was an Australian drama producer or a reality producer, and I truly wanted to play on the global scale, I think you would pause and reflect. Well, what kind of stories could I tell that could, in some ways, have an impact and would work for an American?
And do you think the commissioning piece is going to start to lean into that a little more?
I think probably.
Because of that. And is it the case? There's a lot of conversation about that. There really isn't a lot. I mean, there's an outsourcing of American production globally. Is that going to, do you think, continue in the way that it's managed? We've got very good incentives here globally in different areas. And it won't be, do you think, matched by energy that the Americans will put into their own market in terms of incentives?
Do you know what? I think this is a big moment, actually, because you see the leakage of so much production out of America. We're here at the Disney studios
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And they seem to be always busy.
Yeah.
There's always big shows.
Yeah.
And you know, I was on the set yesterday of The Artful Dodger,
Yes.
which is, I mean, it's such a joy to be there.
Yes.
And it was a joy because it's a very happy production and what have you. But also it was a joy to see the craftsmanship of those people. I mean, honestly, the sets are amazing, etc., etc. Australia's got this very deep craft. It's got the rule of law, English language. The weather's great.
Yeah.
People like being here. David Thewlis loves being here. Thomas Sangster, they love it.
Yeah.
So you've got that big advantage. So I would imagine, and actually it is interesting. How does America and California in particular respond to this? Because it's very expensive to make film and TV in California at the moment.
And some of their agreements are difficult now for production companies to navigate.
Yeah.
Look, I know you've said to me that Curio is your favourite of your stable of production companies.
Yes.
But you have a number that you're working with all the time. How many do you have under your...
I think it's 15.
15.
So we're more boutique than, say, a Banijay or a Fremantle. You know, we're very... We used to be largely non-scripted, and we're in lots of other places in Europe. We're in Dubai and China, and I basically honed it down. We changed, this is about 8 years ago, we thought drama's the way through, we've done that, so now we're sort of
focusing more on that.
Yeah, we became the biggest drama studio in Britain a couple of years ago by the matrix, if you took away the soaps, you know,
this
in
is
terms
11.
of hours. This is Bad Wolf, Left Bank, 11th Hour and so on, yeah.
You started as an investment and a connection with the Davids,
the
with
lovely
Playmaker.
Davids, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's been so it's been a long engagement, and I always thought that Playmaker were interesting in the market as leaning into a conversation that I think hadn't been happening about the role of the creative driving the production, and I think they were great partnerships that were set up. And I think that's evolved into what Curio's doing, and Joe, and that's obviously an evolution of the business. How are you seeing the market in Australia as your lens over this, and obviously having an interest in what Joe and the team at Curio are doing, but are you seeing the opportunities? Are you seeing some of the risk aversion that sometimes people talk about? Is there bold plays, enough resources for people? And you don't have to name individuals, but just as a general piece, you know, what are you thinking is going on? This is for more the local commissioning layer.
Well, I think the first thing, when I first came here, which was to sort of sell shows like The Dancing Show and what have you, and then when I was at the BBC, we set up a production company over here as well.
Yeah.
It was very much it was a load of men.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, all in power and everything, and some of them became very, very dear friends. You know, the best reality producers were the Fennessy brothers. The commissioners you had a lot of fun were Tim and Brad and Angus at Seven and so on and so forth. And what's interesting now is that the people who are in power, who are making the decisions, are mostly women, which is great, and they're really impressive women. And I've got to know, you know, we've got Kylie and Debs at Disney have been absolutely brilliant partners on The Artful Dodger. We haven't done anything with Q at Netflix, but I'm very fond of her, and I think you know, Boy Swallows Union. I mean, that is a big, bold show to make, and you know, and Bev is a pal at 10. So. I think the industry itself is very interesting in terms of the characters who are now there. Secondly, you've got you know this market is reflective of what's happening in the rest of the world, which is the free-to-air broadcasters are finding it difficult. It still amazes me how many free-to-air channels you do have in this market. I thought 10 years ago
we were going to consolidate it.
But it never happened, and they still throw off cash. And when and this may be hard, but when I talk to people who work for the streamers outside of Australia but have some managerial or commissioning responsibility, whether it's a rather brilliant Javiera who runs Amazon or Morgan at Apple or whatever, they all say to me they want more content out of Australia. And they are looking for it because Australia, they know, can be a big market for them. What does that mean? Netflix only commissioned 8 dramas out of the UK. Only 8.
Is that right?
That's it. 8 original dramas, you know, and they range from The Gentleman down. But so you're never going to get a huge number. You're never going to get. If Apple make 2 dramas a year out of Australia, that will be a good result, I think. Yes. So there isn't but the prize is, it's pretty magnificent, isn't it? I mean, we're making this great show, The Artful Dodger, which has a great budget. It's a great show. Everyone loves it. It's a brilliant prize to have. And that's what, if I was an Australian producer, I'd be aiming for.
I mean, I think that it's sometimes it's really interesting talking to someone with a bit of a global picture as well, because I think we can get into the minutiae of what the problem with that particular thing is, and as we know, the businesses rise and fall a little bit in terms of what's going on for them. I think one of the I'm interested in the evolution of the way we are operating globally, because I think one of the early formative conversations I had with I think I shared with you that with BBC people, BBC Worldwide, where they spent a reasonable amount of time in the Australian market, and they had many other territories that were more important to them. But this was in my days when I was in Foxtel, but they were in the environment because of the regulation piece. And I think there's something about, and maybe this is an insecurity piece, but I also think there's a general reason for a global business to be active in the market if there's some connection piece, and whether that's through the inroads made because of international production or because of a regulation. It does, I think, focus what would otherwise seen as a very far away, remote place for a lot of people that don't travel. I think you were very much a travelled person, but I'm amazed at the number of people who still don't have a concept of Australia, really, and then therefore they can't imagine the idea of working or contributing resources in some way or things like that.
I think I told you there's a very senior person at one of the streamers who won't be named, but
no, name
no, I can't do it to him. And he's years ago, and he worked at Sony, and we were talking about, I think we'd just bought Playmaker or something. He said, the trouble with Australia is it's got no history and no stories, and of course, I mean. What I should have said is, well, you do realise there were human beings in Australia before Western Europe. I mean, so there is a history.
Yeah,
you just don't know about it. I still think. Yeah.
So view of the world, isn't it?
It is. But then, and so, what do they mean by that? Well, they mean Australia isn't Italy with 2,000 years of
classical Roman
culture and stories that have been put on paper and then on film and what have you. But I love coming to Sydney. I love coming to Sydney because and I don't get outside of Sydney much. I sometimes go to Melbourne and what have you. I should really get around a bit more. But it seems to me that when I come to this city, I'm always mindful of how it's changing. So I come once, twice a year, and you can see it's much more. I don't think people outside of Australia quite realise how much Australia looks to Asia, and how much the Asian influence is such a is increasingly,
especially in the city, and in Melbourne.
Exactly on these urban cities, and that, by the way, is only going to increase actually. So the stories you want to tell about convicts, etc., should be in the past really. And what I find interesting, and this is the thing that I bore Joe and Rachel at Cura
about.
Other
than the Artful Dodger, of course.
Oh, the Artful Dodger, yes, yeah. Yeah, but it's another one after that. Is telling stories that reflect contemporary Australia. And I think Australia's a really interesting place in the world at the moment because it needs to find its voice. It's never been a country that's confident about saying what it is, and there's a load of baggage about that we could spend hours debating, but it's never articulated what it is on the world stage, and consequently its creative industries have also found that quite difficult, and that confidence to say, we want to reflect this vision of ourselves. And I think I said to you yesterday, this is maybe a bit trite, but Sony had that Sydney Sweeney movie, that romantic comedy that did unbelievably well.
Incredibly well.
And it did seem to be shot on a almost cloudy Sydney, which is quite unusual. But it reflected to viewers, Sydney looked sexy and exciting and so on. Yeah. And Sydney, Melbourne, these are great world cities. And you need to start telling stories that reflect that and tell the world about that's the society that you are becoming, I think.
Well, and I think that, this is the great opportunity, isn't it? We've got infrastructure, the scale of industry. I think the thing that it's alarmed me sometimes is the maybe inconsistency of some of the global investment in the Australian stories, because I just see that as not necessarily a stable piece within the mix. But I think if the overall system becomes more stable, then I think that'll work. And you're right. I remember being here, coming back from the UK around the time of the Olympics. Now it's dating me a bit, but Australia was in a sort of a hum around that because it was its opportunity to front load its image and impressions to people, and I think that worked. But and the industry, the content industry, the entertainment industry, is its biggest vehicle for continuing to do that. And I mean, agree with you completely.
Look at British soft power. Now, you know, look, we terrible impact on the world in the 19th century and around that time, you know, but now it's all about British soft power, which is language and culture and stuff like that. Andrew Lloyd Webber once, I was talking to Andrew Lloyd Webber, I'm probably trying to find something to talk about, and I said, Joe, what's the best drum schools? And he said, Australia.
Yeah, right.
The best stage schools are in Australia. Yes. The talent they come through. Your ability to find great acting talent is second to none. Actually, directing talent, it's brilliant. You really punch above your weight in the creative industries if you think about it. But it tends to be kind of, it's this person here and that person. You're not very good at finding that soft power story, I think.
But there is a uniting piece and coming up with something. I think you're dead right. Look, we're sort of running out of time. So maybe it's a nice note to put a pin in it. I know it's a short, sharp chat today, and there's probably many, many things we can talk about. I did want to, though, acknowledge your leadership in talking about the industry and being an advocate for the industry, and also for, you know, diversity and for measures that have changed the industry. You talked about the shifts that have gone on, but it is worth acknowledging the people that have helped to contribute to those shifts. I think you're one of those people. You've talked a lot about the demographics of the sector needing to change, and I think the UK has led some of that conversation for, you know, maybe different reasons, but I think Australia's definitely done a bit of that. But I think you've been a big part of that. So, you know, thank you. And you know, in roles like this, you get a chance to do these things. The question is whether you still own a Tesla.
No,
you don't.
In fact, our Tesla, our lease Tesla, came up and we de-ordered it.
Right.
We cancelled the order. So instead I'm buying a Polestar, which I believe is owned by the Chinese government. So I've gone from one
to another.
But at least I'm not driving a swastika. Isn't that what they're calling it?
I don't know. Is it?
I did hear that the other day. Someone said the Teslas are now called swastikas, which is
unfortunate. Well, maybe that's maybe not the best way to leave it, but potentially we shouldn't continue further. Thank you very much for your chat today.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Appreciate it.